and then you transition out of there. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Gerardo Poli.
And this, oh, sorry. Okay.
One of the best bits of advice I've ever received was to find good mentors and to learn from them. Trusted people who have already done what you're trying to do now. I've been fortunate throughout my career to have some fantastic mentors to help guide me, but I realized that they'd be hard to find and also hard to commit the time to one. This is why we've gathered some of the best minds from the veterinary world and squeezed them for their wisdom so that you don't have to learn the hard way.
With the help of our guests, we flip the veterinary profession on its back and explore its soft underbelly to find the tips, tools, and inspiration that you'll need to build the career that you've always wanted.
I'm Gerardo Poli.
I'm Hubert Hemstra, and this is the Vet Vault.
For today's episode, we are fortunate to have with us a young vet who has contributed more to the veterinary profession in her relatively short veterinary career than many of us will do in a lifetime. Dr. Paula Parker is currently the president of the Australian Veterinary Association and is the youngest person to ever be elected to this position. When she's not leading the team that makes major policy decisions and guides the future of our profession, both in Australia and internationally, she gets her hands dirty by working as an emergency veterinarian in the Gold Coast, Australia. Our discussion with Paula unearthed some very practical tips and tools. And don't forget to listen to our bonus section at the end of the episode.
I found the discussions about productivity, mental resetting and transitioning, and how to get past no particularly useful. We also cover a wide range of other topics, like the pros and cons of rural practice, how to deal with being the new vet, especially the new girl vet in a farm practice environment, controlling the controllables, the value of serving on committees and other organizations, and about vomiting for fun. We also address a huge issue for many people in our profession. We talk about money, how to think about it, how to talk about it, and how to make it. I thoroughly enjoyed this interview, and I felt inspired and grateful to be part of a profession with such incredible people on so many different journeys within this profession. And I trust that you will feel the same. So please enjoy Dr. Paula Parker.
Paula, thanks for coming on and making the time to have a chat with us.
That's okay.
Paula, it's common knowledge that you're an emergency vet and that you're the current president of the AVA. But when I Googled you, Wikipedia said that Paula Parker is an American actress, comedian, director, songwriter. I didn't know that about you.
Just one of those people, like I stay up late at night and just try and accomplish tasks. So.
Yeah, okay. What's been your greatest hits songs that you've written so far?
Look, what I did for The Little Mermaid, I'm really proud of that.
Kiss the Girl. I love that song.
Yeah. It's like when you get to a Disney movie at the theater and there's like a sing-along and you can like stand out the front of the theater and just really, belt it out. I should be careful with this because then someone's going to ask me to sing. That would be really terrible.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Okay. All right, so that's obviously the wrong Paula Parker, but I am curious, what does Paula Parker do when she's not being president or working in an emergency clinic? What do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? One of the books I read this year is this book by Gretchen Rubin called The Four Tendencies. Have you read it?
Mm-mm.
No.
It's fascinating. I think you would both like it. But it talks about, it's like a personality type framework, but it just addresses one thing. So how do you respond to expectations? And she has these four tendencies of like, are you an upholder or a questioner or a rebel or an obliger? And it, talks about what's your response to external expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I am like the quintessential like upholder person. Like, be there an expectation. My mind is obsessed with, okay, how can I tick the box? So at the moment, I'm obsessed with like Marie Kondoing my whole house, but to the point where I'm wandering around like looking for things to throw away, and like my TV remote is starting to get a little bit worried. Like, we've got things sorted at this point in time. So I do like to nerd out and all that geeky stuff. And we live on the coast, so that makes it pretty easy to go to the beach, walk the dog, walk around the lake, and to go out on the paddleboard.
Yeah.
But my life is this kind of nice mosaic of lots of different things. So work in emergency, different stuff with the AVA, which is both the kind of media stuff and then also the business of the AVA. And I really like the business group, which is good. And then I love doing spinning or RPM. So there was a while there where when I lived in Victoria, when I was working in mixed practice, I was an instructor. I was a Les Mills instructor.
Oh, yeah?
And I would teach RPM, and I taught body balance and CX Works, this sort of core program. But I don't teach anymore. I just go for fun. And there's a really great group of girls that we like to do, and we'll do sort of pack rides together. And that is probably one of the things where it's like kind of first thing on a Saturday morning or in the afternoon, we just absolutely have a blast doing that. So, which is also probably like a weird thing, you know, would you like to go to this, like, be strapped on a bike and do this annoying cardio workout for 45 minutes and pump along to the songs? And I can see people just rolling their eyes at that, but I love it.
I was about to just to comment. I ask you what you do for fun, and you list tidying your house and spinning. I think you need to come and visit in WA, and we'll have a bit of fun.
People can laugh, but that's the truth.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I've said the same to Gerardo. I do worry about Gerardo and lack of fun. You see,
your perception of fun, right?
What I see as fun, exactly.
Yeah, mine generally, it's like Paula. Generally, my fun involves physical pain, so multiple times a day. So exercise and so forth. But I think it's good for the mind, totally.
I totally agree. No, I enjoy that, and I need it. But I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say it's fun.
But it's always the thing after. It's kind of like it's after it's done. Like, I'm sure, Paula, you feel amazing after you've done your 45 minutes, but also there's I suppose, that's a question, I'm sure you do feel amazing after. It's the reason why you do it. Yeah.
I think it's like, you feel amazing after it, but I actually enjoy it during it, which the exercise that it's like, I only enjoy it afterwards. I never really can stick to. I've got to enjoy it like while it's happening. And I have this love-hate relationship with running, where the first like 3 to 4 kilometers of running, I just hate every second of it. And it's like a thud. And then between like 3Ks and like 9Ks, I'm the fittest person in the world. And it's just like I'm in the groove and following along. And then after we get over about 9Ks, we go back to like,
yeah.
So...
Were either of you, were you sporty when you were kids, or is the exercise thing an adult activity? Like when you were at school, were you booky as well as sporty and stuff? You don't get into vet without being a bit booky, but how were you as a kid?
I was always, so if we go back to like how you respond to expectations, the expectation I had as a kid was, you did a summer sport and you did a winter sport, and then you flop between the two. And so I grew up in Brisbane, and so lots of water sports. So summer it was swimming, and particularly liked long distance swimming, so sort of 800 kind of sort of races. And then during school I did rowing.
Okay.
So, which was like, it's sort of that combination of like when you're out there first thing in the morning, and this is when I could get up early, and like the sun is rising and it's you on a single scull and you're just like breaking water. It's like the most peaceful feeling in the whole world. But it also has the thing where you sitting on an ergo machine and there's someone standing next to you like yelling that perhaps you haven't gone hard enough because you haven't vomited yet.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the both sides.
I just don't want to, you're just trying to make sure you don't mess the machine up. Otherwise, they've got to clean it up, right? Vomit in chains and, like mechanics isn't really a good thing. So.
Oh, Gerardo, we were tidy. Like, there was always a bucket on the side.
Okay. I got a vomit. But,
what sort of a heathen projectile vomits onto the airphone machine? Like,
sometimes they just happen. You and I just had a discussion about eating before exercise and we talked about how he needs to eat, but then all of a sudden he can't exercise for an hour because he's eaten too much. And then I've kind of tweaked mine so it's like three spoonfuls of oats, but with no animal milk. So it's like obviously it's just soy milk or something. And once you get rid of that curdle, then the vomit goes. So like I never have to vomit in the morning anymore now when I train, which is good. So just kind of just trying to figure out what works really. And a bucket by the side is a very practical thing. So yeah. But when you were talking before about being an upholder, and sort of, and also you described, you meet up with a group of friends and you train and so forth. So an aspect of an upholder, right, upholds obligations within themselves, and then also upholds obligations with others as well. So you meet your inner and outer expectations, right? So,
yeah.
And when I think about it, because I went through the quiz about a year ago, and I'm an upholder as well. I used to think I'm a questioner. I think Alex thinks I'm a questioner because I always ask the questions. But creating social accountability and social obligations. So, does that help you in terms of, getting up, making sure that you turn up on time, doing your part for the business, like doing your part for the AVA, and like, your social obligation or your social accountability? Is that what helps you drive you forward?
I think for me, so in the framework, Gretchen Rubin talks about upholders are motivated by internal and external expectations. And you can kind of tip to one side a bit more in terms of, are you more motivated by internal expectations or more motivated by external? And for me, it tips more to the internal part about it. So, I quite like the group of people that I exercise with, but I would just as happily go to the gym and do a video session or a video class, or even just listen to my own music, and I can get myself to the same place. So it's nice, but it's more about what I've decided to do internally. Mm-hmm. And I think with the AVA, it's an incredibly privileged position to be in. And so you feel a lot of responsibility to your colleagues and, the commitments, and you want their professional life to be as good as it can possibly be. But the thing I suppose that keeps me accountable the most is that how I've decided I wanted to be in this role. And that's the part that I come back to about this is the kind of vision that I saw for myself in the role, and that's what I've got to try and keep myself accountable to.
So, like, you got two questions stemming off that, because the reason why I asked about social accountability or social obligations is it's one of the high performance habits is that if you it's creating accountability, and often if you can create accountability around something which benefits others, then you're more likely to fulfill on that task and do that task to the best of your ability. So it's not just an obligation within yourself, but then I can see then how it really depends on the kind of person you are with regards to whether you're an obliger or a questioner or a rebel or something like that. So, but I really like what you said there, and it's similar to what you said there was the person you wanted to be. So you somewhat set the intention of the Paula Parker that you wanted to be as president.
Yeah, I think I did that as president, and I do it in my clinical work as well. So, I want people to think of me as someone who is thorough and who is diligent, and in that leadership role has that balance of the ability to listen to people, but also has the moral courage to chart a course, and equally to stay committed to the course that you've charted. And and that's always, as various kind of challenges come in, that, has been something where I've had to kind of come back to a case of, what's my role, what's our role as a profession, what's our role in this issue, and how can we come back to that, that course. And live export's been a big one that we've sort of managed over the last year. So there's lots of different parts of that issue that people have debates about. We debate about ethics, we debate about the role of animals, whether people will do the right thing, how many chances people should get. And they're all things that people can legitimately have debates about as people, but what's our unique role as veterinarians and what's the role of the AVA? And it's to talk about animal health and welfare and really be the leading voice on that subject. And that's something where it's been that constant, this is our role, this is the intention that we've set, and we've got to keep coming back to this place because this is the unique thing that we offer the community. And also not being afraid to be the leader. Like, we are the experts in animal health and welfare, and we should have that leadership voice as a body and as individuals, and we've got to be happy to kind of step into that role.
It's a big job.
Yeah, I love it. How we talk about, you talked about sort of your role and you come back to it all the time, and somewhat puts things into perspective a little bit when you're talking about live exports, and that's the things that the AVA and yourself are involved in managing when that's a bit of an adverse situation in a way. Like, that's a big situation. It's something that's really worth giving a stuff about, when I suppose that it's like you get stuck in your own little bubble of oh my god, my shoes are wet, and now I have to go to the gym because I didn't dry them in time or something like that. So putting things in perspective quite quickly then. I think that was quite an awesome a little situation you shared with us just then.
I think that for me has been the most amazing. Like, obviously when you're in a leadership role within the AVA, you put a lot of time and effort into it, but what's flowed back to me has been 1,000-fold compared to what I've put into it. And the biggest thing for me is that ability to, you go into one of those situations, be it a meeting or a conference or with your colleagues, and you have this enormous ability to get lifted up from your day-to-day life, and you get to see the full scope of all of the amazing things that vets can do, and all of the things that we're capable of, and also a little bit of that people do have really positive prospects about our sector, and there's lots of opportunities out there. And it's kind of easy when you're in the consult room and someone says no, you can't do a $70 blood test on my dog, to get a little bit and it's that sort of amazing ability to be look, that's about that one person or their financial situation. As long as I've put my best foot forward in terms of why I believe that's the right thing to do, I can move on, because there's so much stuff out there and so many other things that we can do with our skills too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of our major goals of undertaking this project, is to change that negative perception that can be a bit of an issue in our profession.
Yeah. And I think it's scary to make a jump to doing something different, to go from, doing a primarily clinical role to going into, a government role. And sort of been lucky over the last year that you see people working across, the spectrum. One weekend I can be, working with a team at AES, and we have 7 patients on ventilators, and you have this feeling of this is why we go to school, this is why we do all this CE, so that we are capable of this. And then you can equally, I was part of our delegation to the OAE in Paris, where the kind of World Organization of Animal Health, and you see our government vets negotiating our agricultural trade deals in Paris, and you think we're the same group of people, and just this amazing thing you can do. And one of the vets was there, went from being in clinical practice, and 2 years later she's negotiating trade deals in Paris. And
wow,
yeah, it's just amazing.
What was I'd love to find out about your journey into the AVA. Well, first of all, why? What was your reasons for doing it, and how did it happen?
So when I first moved, I was a UQ grad, so Gerardo and I were in the same year at uni, and I moved down to Langatha in South Gippsland. and it was a really big dairy mix practice. So there was about 20 vets when I first went down there, and quite a lot of young vets, new graduate vets. And the vet clinics down there, because they're sort of dairy intensive area, quite a number of big practices around the region.
Yeah.
So we had a pretty active local branch where we would get together and, you know, mostly go to the pub, sometimes have CE, some just catch up socially. And it sort of got to the point where there needed to be someone to organise that part of it. And organisational freak that I am, enjoyed that aspect of it, and, you know, getting to meet people and having that kind of social circle. So moving from someone where I had met them on prac work, but otherwise only really knew one person down there, really helped with having that social circle. And then I got this opportunity to create things. So we created a day, which is still running now, like a dairy day, where all of the kind of dairy experts in the intensive areas across Victoria came to Langatha for a day, and we had like, what's the latest and greatest in, you know, in dairy medicine. And the next year that day kind of toured around the state, and that's still going sort of to this day. And so you have this like, wow, I have this opportunity to create something which is really cool. And so I really enjoyed that. And then when I was moving back from Victoria to Queensland, I sort of went into the office and I said, oh, well, I've done this position probably 5-7 years. And I said, well, it's a regional position, you know, I'm moving back to Queensland, I'm going to have to resign. And they said to me, oh, we think you should nominate for the board. And by this time I was running an emergency centre. I'd moved out of mixed practice.
Yep.
And I kind of went, oh, like I couldn't possibly, that's for people who are older or this or that. And they said, well, you've been in the AVA and, you know, like you run a reasonable sized business, you've got the business skills, and you've got passion to do it, really think you should. And they got a couple of other people to give me a ring and encourage me to do it. And so I sort of put my application together, and then I submitted it thinking, oh, well, that's done now. Like, I've honoured all those people who said that I could. Off I go with life. And as the sort of election process went on, I thought, do you know what, actually, I would really, really like to do this, and was lucky enough to get elected. And it's been the most fantastic combination of part of working with the profession and doing what you love about the profession. But being on the board is a lot about running a business, and I love that part of it as well. And so I've been lucky where it's like the two parts of this really excite me. So sometimes you'll find people, they come on board and they are really passionate about the profession, but they're not so much interested in running a business, and they get a bit frustrated with a lot of the board is about running a business. But I've loved that aspect of it. So yeah, it's been amazing.
And did it mean cutting back on management time in the vet practice, or was it easy enough to juggle both? Like time commitment to the AVA initially, and not in your role as president, but in earlier days.
Yeah, in the earlier days, it didn't. I was able to fit it in quite easily when I had just a local branch role, and the staff, you know, do a huge amount to support. It's more just thinking about the ideas and how you think things should kind of come together, and then people help you with the logistics. So it wasn't a huge time commitment then at all. And then as I came onto the board, it was about a day a week, and it kind of coincided with, it was about 6 months before my membership exam. And I was running this business down south, and it just sort of got to the point where it's like, I'm not going to pass this exam unless I change something in life. And, you know, sort of a few other stars aligned, and it was time to move back to Queensland. And so I sort of came onto the board, and I started working at AES, and then I was studying for my membership at the same time. And I've had that slash of different things for a few years now, and I really enjoy doing, you know, a combination of different stuff. So
yeah, cool. Now I want to go back a little bit to when you just qualified and your time in mixed practice. First off, what was that when you just qualified? Was your idea that you're going to be a mixed practice vet, or did you have a longer term vision of, I'm going to end up there in life, or was it just, yeah, this is what I want to do, I want to work in dairy practice?
I had decided while I was at uni that I wanted to do dairy practice. And I sort of, when I look back at it now, there is parts of me that's not sure whether it was something that I decided to do because I really wanted to do it, or it was something I decided to do because someone told me that I couldn't, or that I shouldn't, or that I wouldn't be very good at it. But regardless, I turned that, it became an internal expectation that was what I wanted to do. And I am incredibly grateful that I did it, that it was kind of, my time in mixed practice was the best of times and the worst of times. Like, when it's amazing, it is like, crisp, fresh mornings and live carvings and farmers making you scones and, like, I'm all for the baked goods. But, and then, like, when it's bad, like, I can remember this one day where sort of worked at a branch clinic up at Moobie North, which is sort of on the Streslecky range, and I lived in Leongatha. And there's 2 roads to Moobie North from Leongatha, and they're wall-to-wall dairy, both sides. And so I finished the clinic up in Moobie North, and I was sort of on my way home. And it's that time of day where you think, nothing on, maybe I can go home, maybe I'll like get home on time and I'll be off to go for a swim at the pool or whatever. Anyway, and we had 2-way radios in our car. So it came over the radio, such and such has got a cow with a prolapse on the Mardan Road, which is one of the roads. So, like, off I go. First one is, and I'm not sure if you've ever done a prolapse before, but so you have this like enormous cow and their enormous uterus, and somehow you get the enormous uterus back the right way inside the enormous cow. But it's all like a factor of gravity, really. You have to have the enormous cow facing the right way, get the enormous uterus back in. And then if you use a combination of cow facing the right way and drugs, then, off you go, kind of thing. Still a very physically demanding task. Yeah. And so you sort of spin the cow so she's facing the right way, and they're usually lying down. And then you sort of like stuff the uterus back in. And I would always like put the uterus back in and like just hold it inside the vagina and then like pant for a few minutes. Just exhausted from this. Anyway, and then you put it in, and then the idea is then you try and get the cow up and off you go, right? So it's one of the most physically demanding tasks, but it's not really a strength thing. It's just a cardio endurance kind of task. Yeah. Anyway, so I did this, and I was like, whew, done. Now I'm off to the pool. Radio back in. Oh, glad you're there. Such and such has also got a cow with a prolapse, and they're at the next farm, and they can see you sitting at the top of the driveway. So if you just give them a wave, and down you go.
So what time of the day are we now? Where is this? This is knockoff time.
Yeah, this is like 25 past 5. Kind of thing.
No. Okay.
So I go to the next farm, and this one doesn't go so smoothly. So this cow's got herself like into the dam, and like she's wet, and now it's starting to rain. And, so this is a bit more of a kind of annoying process to get the cow in the right direction. And all that kind of that sticks in my mind is after this time, my jeans are wet, my overalls are wet, my underwear is wet. Like I've reached a point of like misery, right? But we get this one back in, and we get this cow up, and I get back to the top of the thing, and I'm thinking, right, now I don't feel like going to the pool, but God damn it, I decided I was going to go to the pool, so I'm going to go. And then I get the next one. Oh, excellent. Glad you're there. We've just got one more for you. And then so off I go to the third prolapse, right? And like by this time I'm exhausted after this sort of cardio endurance, and I've got this expectation in my mind that I'm going to the pool. And the third one is with this farmer that I'm not a particular, fan of. And unfortunately, it still happens in mixed practice where, as a female veterinarian, you will get out of the car, and really with large animals, if it's a physical strength thing, you're doing it wrong. Like it is a combination of sedatives and pulleys and all this sort of stuff. But unfortunately, there's a few people out there that still, you get the, girly this or girly that, or they've sent the B team today. And so one of the farmers that likes to do this, and so I get out of the car at my third prolapse, and the kind of farmer goes to me, oh, it's you, girly. I've heard you've done 2 of these already. I hope you'll have enough energy left. and I was sort of like, steam is coming out of my ears, and you're kind of thinking to yourself, like, you can't react in that situation, because if you react to that, then all you do is confirm their accusation at you that you're behaving like a child.
Yeah.
So, you sort of put on the happy voice. Absolutely not. I'll be, let's go and get this done and get her up and off we go. Like, internally, I am quite tired, but like in some ways, like, he gave me that kind of shot of anger adrenaline that helped me, finish that third task. And then, so we finished that one, and then it was like time to go home. And I'm like such a stubborn little soul. I finished that one and I radio in, and I'm thinking, I decided to go to the pool. So I go to the pool, and it's like 15 minutes like before the pool closes, and the pool manager's like, "Oh, Paula, like, we close in 15 minutes." I think to myself, I don't care. I decided I was going for a swim.
I'm going to jump in my overalls. You deal with that.
I'm wet already anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, wash your
I need
feet.
to get my anger out in a socially acceptable way, and the pool is where I'm going to do it.
And I need to wash the cow uterus off me anyway, and I'm going to do it in your pool.
Yeah.
I love it if you were just like, that's the final straw. You're the next guy who tells me I can't do something. Watch this. Boom, all everything. Now I go. Oh.
That is a big concern always for rural. Well, I perceive it as a concern for rural practice, and that keeps a lot of people out of rural practice, is that stigma of the young vet. I did a wee bit of farm practice afterwards, and I certainly, even being male, was always intimidated showing up at a farm, and this farm is looking over and making judgment about you. And then I can imagine, well, I worked with my wife in rural practice as well, and she certainly had that female vet stigma attached to her. How do you deal with that mentally? How do you cope with that, and how do you stop it from stopping you from doing your job?
I think it's one of the most difficult things about rural practice. And for me, I really enjoyed the work, and I enjoy living in a rural community. And that was one of the biggest negatives for me about living in working in rural practice. And the things that I found that myself is, it's like how to manage yourself. And that's something where I have, that's one of the things where I've had to work on a lot over my career, of like, when someone stings you, your kind of natural gut reaction is like to kind of put your hands on the hips and tell the man that just called you girly, listen here, bud, I've just done 2 of these and I know what I'm doing. And, if you don't want me here, I'm more than happy to go down to the pool and have a swim, because that's what I'd rather be doing at this point in time. But it's like that, you've got to suppress that, because it doesn't help you in the situation. And then if you react that way, all you do is kind of confirm their accusation at you. But it's like you have to deal with that feeling in some way, because if you don't, what happens is that you get back to the clinic and one of the nursing team asks you to do something with your overalls, and you go like, rah! But like someone has kind of been a shit to you, you do the same for someone else. And so you've got to work on how do you deal with it, in yourself, and how do you talk to yourself about it. And then the other thing which I found which is most helpful is it's how the leaders of the practice set the culture, both within the practice and then also with the clients, and how they talk about you and how they respond when clients do question your judgment. And it's kind of natural to when you are in that position, because a lot of those things over time have become easy for you when people do struggle with new graduates. It's very easy to kind of like sort of sail on in and say, oh, it's okay, this is how you do it, really easy, and you come in and sort of do it, and that kind of, it gets the problem solved. But what can happen then is that you sort of reinforce that this person doesn't is unsure or that sort of stuff. And so they, the leaders in those rural practices have such an important role to play. And there were some of the some of the people that I worked with who were amazing at that, at their ability to come in, and they would, if you were stuck on a farm or something like that, they would come and help you, but they would do it in a way which propped you up to the producer, and helped you rather than kind of coming in as the savior.
Yeah. So they don't make you look stupid or more make you look incapable.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And, I'm sure like that required a lot of self-discipline from them at times too, because it would have been easier, particularly if your call for help came at 5:15, like they want to go to the pool too.
Yeah.
Much easier for them to just come on in and say, oh, I can solve this problem. We'll be done in 10 minutes, off we go. But that, and also how they spoke about you to other clients. And the other thing which helped me enormously is that they helped, particularly in rural communities, you be a part of the community. So when I moved to Langaffer, I swam at school, and some of the partners of the practice that I were in were really involved with the swimming club. And so they got me involved with the swimming club. And it was, yes, how I met people, something I like to do, but it was also that part about becoming part of the fabric of the community that didn't really have anything to do with you being a vet. And you are able to relate to people on a personal level. And so when they talked about you to other people, they would say, oh, one of our new vets, she is, coach for the, kids at swimming, doing this part of the swimming club.
Yeah.
And, people, they sort of reinforced the value that you had to the community, which was, yes, as a vet, but also that you were becoming part of the fabric of the community.
Well, you mentioned a couple of things there in what you were just saying. One of the things that really sort of stood out for me, and you didn't actually quite use the word, but is the skill of transition. So like transitioning from one mindset to the next, from one task to the next, and like it's one of the things that you learn over time to do. Maybe it's a component of experience or something, but the faster you master your thoughts and stabilize them and prepare yourself for the next task, conversation, or whatever it is you need to do, then the better you perform, obviously. But how do you manage transitions?
Sort of starting off in mixed practice actually really helped for me. So your transition time when you're in mixed practice is when you're in the car. And one of the vets, Melissa, that I used to work with, she was really helpful when I first started about explicitly saying, this is a transition time. This is where you get yourself and your thoughts together so that you can show up at the next property. And she would always say, finish at the farm, drive to the gate, the end of the property, have something to eat, have a drink, just take a minute, and then radio into the clinic and let them know that you're ready for the next job. But then you're not going to show up thirsty, you're not going to show up hungry, and you've taken a minute kind of to yourself, and you've done that closing off of one thing before you moved on to the next thing. So you sort of also, you would sit there at the gate and you would write, we used to have paper diaries, but you would write the drugs that you used or things that you've done on that particular call. So you've got that's out of my mind, don't need to remember anything, kind of off we go, transition to the next thing. So sort of a task management thing, but also getting your head right. And then you also had the time while you were driving to have that space. And I think one of the challenges when you work in emergency particularly, but even in general practice, it's not uncommon when you're in emergency on a Sunday where you are simultaneously doing 5 consults. Like you've got 5 people in 5 different rooms, and you've got them at various stages of the consult, and you've got to transition between one and the other. And, it's not uncommon that one of those consults is someone's pet who has a terminal, illness.
Yeah.
And then the other one is, a kitten that is still eating, but it's got a bit of diarrhea and is really not that unwell. And, I had one on Sunday where those 2 consults were literally in the next room with each other. And it's sort of that ability to be like, okay, take a breath and consciously go, this is a new space. I have to give this person, my focused attention, and then I close that off for a second and I open up a new window. And the other part where I find really helpful about that is, you know, often in emergency, like people will be waiting before you see them. Like you, as much as you try to, you don't see them straight away.
Yep.
Right, when you're really busy. And it's also that thing of when you have got 5 consults in 5 different rooms and there's people in the waiting room, the one person that you're speaking to, they can't be conscious that you're thinking about those 5 other people. You want them to know that you're only thinking about them and their pet, but also for your efficacy of like actually doing the task and actually getting the history and actually working out what's wrong with the animal is like you have to be present in that room.
Yep.
And so I think it's like a practice that it's over the kind of last 10 or 11 years, it's takes me less and less time to do. But where I often will like stand there and I will take a breath, pause before I open a door, and then, you know, in I go. And I still have times where, like, you know, the pressure of there's a really sick patient, I don't know what's wrong with it, or there's lots of people waiting, like definitely, you know, gets to me. And I definitely still do the thing sometimes where I'm like super nice to the clients in the room and I go to someone, you know, one of the nurses or something out the back. And, you know, like sometimes it will be as simple as I'm just going to go to the bathroom.
Yep.
Just going to go to the bathroom. I'm just going to take a minute and then collect myself and kind of off I go again. And that's often my like rescue strategy where I feel like I'm going off the track that I need to be on a little bit. I'm just going to, you know, center myself a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. The skill of really kind of like purging your thoughts, recentering, and then being present for the person you're talking to next is really powerful. And the situation you described there when you're doing multiple consults at once is classic for emergency. And yeah, you might be having a puppy, then going into directly from that conversation into one about humane euthanasia for an older dog. And like for me, I have a ritual, and the ritual, like as you said, you know, you breathe in and you breathe out and you're ready. For me, my ritual is really kind of like standing up straight, shoulders back, deep breath in, and I've become a bit more conscious of actually what I do, and it's adjusting my stethoscope and then adjusting my name badge, and then it's kind of like, and then from there it's like, okay, I'm ready, and that takes like 3 seconds, 4 seconds or something, but it's enough to go woosa from whatever happened just 30 seconds ago to right, okay, now I need to be present. And yeah, like it, and as you were saying, like I think it was powerful what you're saying, or the advice that your colleague gave you about sort of before calling in for the next call, or for the next job, kind of just really recenter. And I think it's something that people learn over time, but I do believe, and what we try to talk about with our new interns which come through, we try to get them to transition quick. And I think it's a skill that if you have a ritual behind it, a conscious ritual behind it, you can do it quicker and faster.
Yeah,
so
absolutely, I agree. It's something that develops with time. Even if you don't consciously do it, you as you say, you do notice one day that I've got a little ritual that I do to reset. But it's probably a useful thing if you're a young vet or a new graduate, is to pick something, pick a little ritual, pick a thought. I'm the same with the stethoscope. I grab a stethoscope, check the animal's name. The last thing I do before I go is to double check the animal's name, and then I know who I'm going to see. And then I stop for a second at the door to the consult room, and I try to think empathy. Okay, this person needs my empathy, and open the door, and then you go, and it's a different. But that's developed naturally. But it'll be very handy if you're a young vet to work out, what am I going to do, what's my little ritual to help you with that transitioning.
The other thing you also talked about is you know, like what you do to reset when you really can't, sort of thing. It's like you try to transition, you can't, you kind of like something's stopping you. And it really comes down to like what you talked about there, which is kind of state management. It's like, what do I need to do to help me manage my state? it's such a hard thing to do when you have so much on your plate and you're in consult waiting, and you don't realize the thing that's impacting you may be the absolute need to go to the loo, right? And if you do that, all of a sudden your state's managed. So it's being conscious around the management of your state and kind of what's affecting you. And I'm not like a really a big coffee drinker at work, but drinking water helps me. It's like, okay, and I realize I'm thirsty. I can't think. So a bit more of a conscious sort of awareness. I don't know if that's something that you do yourself or.
I find one of the keys for me is like, don't let yourself get too hungry or don't let yourself get too thirsty. And like I have an unfortunate habit of fainting. So I sort of, that kind of pushes that habit a little bit more, but I will consciously, particularly on the really busy shifts where you're going, I will consciously eat every couple of hours, just a little bit, and not so much that I've got a big slug of food, but it's just sort of keeps me going to the point where, I'm not too hungry, because I get the like, when I'm hungry, I get angry, and then I faint. And so don't like that anger isn't very helpful, and the fainting's really not helpful either. So, it's like knowing what do you personally need to show up, to put your best foot forward. And I think the other really important transition is how you transition from work to home, and that I have to, that's another transition I've got to try and manage consciously, because it's so I don't do that, oh, here is like my partner or my significant other or someone at home, and I just go crap. And so, it's that, how do you do that transition? So a point where you already kind of imagine home as consult room. And I have this like in my mind, I imagine as I'm leaving work, like sort of like I leave the work suitcase at the door, and as I cross the threshold of the door, then, off I go. And kind of do the same, sort of prepare before I open the door of the house of like, am I really ready to, walk in? And I think sometimes it's helpful to think, I can get to this point where I'm having difficulty managing my own mental state. And it's like, what is it that is really bothering me? And going through that series of asking yourself a few questions about like, why, what is it that is really worrying me underneath? And then, okay, how am I going to sort out that actual, the actual thing? And yeah, is it something that is it food or is it drink, or is it that like I'm worried about something at home, I'm worried about a big bill that's come in, or this, that, or the other, and how do I sort that out so that I don't project that worry in all of these unhelpful ways?
So it's just a self-awareness and a mindfulness exercise, really, is to just identify the emotion and identify what's affecting it. Have you got any mindfulness practices, or does it just come naturally to you? Is it a skill you've learned, or do you work on it actively?
It's definitely a learned thing, and then there's some things that I do. So I find having a plan is really important. So if I have a plan and I know when there is time for things to get done, then I can kind of like, that helps me be in the moment, because I know that task, that presentation, that this, that, or whatever, there's time allocated to get that done. So I will worry about it at the time. That helps me a lot. And I also find when I am in that kind of heightened state, I will do a little bit of like a brain dump into a notebook of what are the things that are, really worrying me. And sometimes I'll do that 5 why exercise of like, okay, you think that's the problem, and continue to ask yourself questions until you get to the heart of it. But other times it will be because my brain is full of stuff and I dump it down onto a notebook, and then you kind of go through, it's almost like once it's on a piece of paper, it's separate from your brain, and you look to it and you say, well, like that thing is totally irrelevant and you have no control over that whatsoever. So like, let's put a line through that one. And here's this thing. What is the thing that you actually need to do? Do you need to schedule it? Do you need to take one step to kind of get that off the plate? And what I try and do sort of daily is have a list of like, this is my plan for the day. These are the tasks that I've got to do, and somewhere where I can dump the things as they come to my mind, so that, it helps me get on top of the little procrastination thing that sits on your shoulder. And
there's a niggly shit, I've got to do that sits in the back of your head. You're right. Once you release it, it's just a weight off your shoulders. Absolutely.
Do you so most mornings I try to do it every morning, but sometimes I wake up late, like this morning, and have to a PT like 20 minutes later after waking up. But do you use a diary planner or like a daily planner? Do you have morning rituals which involve things like planning your day, or is it something that kind of just flows? You do it the night before, or what kind of thing works for you?
Yeah, so I definitely have rituals and routine that helps me heaps. And then I use a digital calendar for appointments and meetings and schedule, that sort of stuff. And then I also have I have like a A4 sheet of paper where I kind of plan out what I'm doing over the week, because mostly my weeks now, yes, there's sometimes where I need to show up for an emergency shift, which is pretty simple, but the rest of the week I really plan myself in terms of when I'm going to get things done. So that helps me work out where am I going to put this in the week, so I know when's working time and when is like going to paddock and having a donut time. That's just a really important thing to diarise.
Sorry, what is paddock? I'm going to interrupt you.
Paddock is a cafe here on the coast, and they have like the most amazing donuts. But I instantly have to put myself on a donut ban, because they are amazing, but they're still donuts,
Sorry to interrupt you. Carry on.
So yes, I have a weekly plan, and then I have a bullet journal. So I kind of use it in the kind of classical bullet journal method, have little signifiers, and I try and set out my plan for the day the night before. And I try and have kind of what are the 3 most important things that I'm going to do the next day. And they're the things that I try and get started on. And then I've got a place to write the niggly things, like go to the post office or, kind of do whatever. And I find that helps me know that things have got a place where they'll happen. And then it also helps me not procrastinate and kind of, put off tasks. I've got to continually fight my own ability to procrastinate. So
I read this thing recently, and it was a different perspective on procrastination, and it was saying that procrastination is a form of stress relief. Really, like whatever it is you're procrastinating on is something you don't want to tackle, so you're trying to divert your memory, like divert your thoughts elsewhere, and it's a form of stress relief. And once I realized that actually what I'm trying to do is stress relief myself, I'm like, shit, like if I just did what I was supposed to do, that'd be even more stress relieving than actually trying to procrastinate. And it's helped me several times with big projects, just procrastinating on like how it's going to happen and what I need to do and so forth. And when I've reframed procrastination in my head, when I realize I'm doing it, it's like, well, actually, no, it's actually me just trying to like avoid and just try to kind of reduce my stress levels. I'm like, actually, I can reduce my stress levels in many other ways. This is not an effective form of it. That's kind of helped me in the last kind of 2 months. So
yeah. It's sort of very similar. I heard this quote, like procrastination is where anxiety lives. And that is I know is so true for me. And it's like, it's that know yourself better thing, know what works for you. So my ideal state is like planned, scheduled, task list, bullet journal. And I feel when I've got that shit sorted, I feel free. Like I can handle whatever you want to throw at me, because I know that things will get done, at a time. And Whereas some people would find that like just rigid and hell, but that structure is actually what helps me feel calm and helps me get on with things. And then the other thing I'll do is like something that I was taught in grade 5, where the teacher used to set an egg timer for me to sit down and do work.
Yeah.
And I still do that to this day. So on my phone, like on my Apple Watch, I've got the little timer signal, and I set it to 23 minutes. And I figure I can force myself to do anything for 23 minutes. And so that I will tend to work in like little blocks of 23 minutes. And if I'm on a roll, I'll go for another 23 minutes. And then I will get up, get a drink, go to the bathroom, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's also that time that helps me. I don't check Instagram. I don't check emails. I don't get up and see what the dog's doing. I don't answer phone calls. I just try and focus on the task. And again, that would, like, some people would listen to that and think this girl is crazy, but it really works for me, and it helps me feel productive and helps me feel calm. And it also helps me feel like, well, I've knocked off, 3 of my little time slots today. I'm totally fine to sit here for an hour and watch the Sex and the City episode for the 7th time, because I've done the work that I need to do.
I'm amazed. 23 minutes is really good. My timer, which I do the same thing as well, is 15 minutes. So if it's 15 minutes, we're going to roll. I'm like, I got another 15 minutes. But then if it's something I really don't like doing, I'm like, shit, I could do this. Just stop. 15 minutes. All you got, mate. You got 12 minutes left. 3 minutes left. You can do it. It's like you're looking at something else, and you're just like, it brings you straight back to. So 23. Maybe I'll have to start increasing it. See how it goes.
It's a great strategy, and for you can apply it way back to if any students are listening to this. I mean, it's not too many people look forward to sitting down and studying in that, but that's such a great study technique as well. So I would just go to study for 15 minutes, and then, as you say, once you hit your stride, once you get in the zone, then sometimes you can just carry on.
But it's a good thing what Paula said, that you get to 3 lots of 23 minutes, right? So now it's probably a good time to stop and
stop anyway, because your productivity starts decreasing.
I can only ever do 2.
Yeah, I get to around about 3, and I'm like, unless it's really engaging, then I'm like, I'll keep it going. But after, about 45 minutes is kind of my time frame. So I was reading lawyer documents last night, and that was at 1:00 in the morning. And I had to do it in 15-minute lots because I had to read it, and it was 67 pages and I had to Google all different types of words like force majeure. I was like, what does that even mean? So, and like, it really kind of helped me last night get through what I needed to do. But yeah, I love it. It's an awesome. You got taught that in grade 5. That's amazing. So yeah,
that's a good teacher. I'm going to come back to when we were talking about niggly problems and things on your mind that stress you out. And I had a very useful thought process earlier this week about somebody who talks about, you've got your day all planned and you're in the right headspace, and you feel problem free, and then stuff comes up, life happens, and these things happen that ruin your day and makes you all grumpy. So suddenly you have 2 or 3 problems pop up unexpectedly, and they make you very grumpy. And it was Sam Harris, the Waking Up course I told you about, Gerard. I was listening to it, and he said he had a day like that where he had 3 problems that were really upsetting him and ruining his day, and he whinged to a friend about it. And the friend said to him, "Did you expect that your life was going to be problem free? Did you really think you're going to get to a point in your life where you have no more problems?" And then he says, "And do you really want to be this stressed about it? You can deal with it, but the crux for me, the thing that changed that I try and think about now, is you don't always need to have the problem solved to not let it bother you or upset you or ruin your day. You can decide, well, look, I'm not going to turn into mode like you said, Paula. I am going to just, yes, I have that problem, but I can still have equanimity and carry on with my day in a positive way, and then deal with the problem later."
That's cool. I love it.
Alrighty.
So, like, did you think your life would be problem free?
Yeah, which is a good thing to think about, because you can. I certainly do. I start feeling sorry for myself. The universe is against me. This sucks so much. I can't believe it. And
Yeah.
it's a ridiculous thought process because it is. That's life is made up of a series of things that you need to solve. And did you really expect that it's ever going to stop? No, it's not. Yeah.
Wow.
I think like, especially for those of us that love emergencies, like there's something about a crisis that's like is alluring in a work sense. It's like that's the point where, like, I know for myself, that's the point where I am at my best professionally. And it's that, for me, it's like that reframing of things of like, this is where I like come alive and I'm sort of at the best. And for me, it's like that. And I think everyone approaches emergency slightly differently, but my framework is you've got to control the controllables, which are, you know, however many percent, 50% or whatever. And then you've got the space to let the chaos happen and to roll with it. And I think, like, you know, if you sort of apply that thinking into other places in your life of like, if you've controlled the controllable and then you've got space for like when bad things happen, because problems are going to crop up and you know, all of that sort of stuff, then, you know, I know there's space to deal with this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Paula, I did Google you, as I said earlier, and I did actually find the right Paula Parker. So I read a few articles and other interviews with you. And there's one quote that somebody, well, you said about the work you do for the AVA and what's important to you. You said one of the issues that's closest to your heart is the financial health and well-being of AVA members, or let's rephrase that as veterinarians globally, for non-Australian listeners. It's a big issue, the money thing in vet, isn't it? The perceived or real lack of remuneration. Are there any? Have you come up with any ideas, any solutions, any workabouts? How do you tackle the low pay issue in veterinary science?
Yeah, so I think there's a few ways for us to think about it. So one is, what is ourselves and our own mindsets and our own self-limiting beliefs? And I think that plays a role. The other part is, how do we run our businesses so that they are profitable and successful? And then the third part is, how do we put money in the hands of pet owners, in the hands of consumers, so that they are able to do the things that we recommend and pay for those things? And that's sort of how I kind of think about it in those three, you know, in those three bundles. So when I'm talking to the media or that we're looking at programs, it's about, you know, when we say to people, you have done quite a lot of media recently about, you know, what's the nexus of stress for vets in clinical practice? And it's that nexus between the client is emotionally stressed because their pet is sick often, but they're also financially stressed. And how do you remove that nexus of stress? And it's like, okay, we've got to have a preventative healthcare plan that keeps our pets healthy, which is to some extent, an insurance against a lot of things. And then we have to have a plan for when things go wrong, because they are going to go wrong at some point in time. And be that insurance, be that a savings account, you know, something there that we can have to, you know, to cater for when things go wrong. And the, I guess, part that kind of, when we think about how do we manage ourselves and our own mindset, I think there seems to be this sort of, unfortunately, this self-limiting belief that we have around money, where this sort of difficulty of, can you be passionate about animal health, passionate about animal welfare, and an ethical, responsible professional, and also be incredibly financially successful? And my contention is that you absolutely can be, and that you should. Is that, you know, I, as I said, the person that I want to be as a clinician is, I want to be diligent and thorough. You know, I'm not the person to come to if you want a quick job or a cheap job. That's not my stick. But I can tell you that I will apply all of the diligence that I would to my own pet, and that I'm committed to try and get an answer. And that I have invested in myself and my own education so that I know that I'm capable and competent at doing that. And that I believe what I'm telling people to do, I really believe that it's the right thing to do. So that I can go into a consult room and I can say to people, you absolutely should spend $1,400 or $1,500 investigating this problem, because this is how we get to the answer, and knowledge is power, and these are the reassurances that we're going to have, and that sort of stuff. And I can be really passionate about that, and that my ability to generate money for the business is what generates income for me as a professional. And that I'm not interested in discounting my expertise, my diligence, my time away from other people, because I know what I do is valuable and it's worth what we charge for it. And that, that is kind of, we talked about self-discipline before, that is something that, I constantly do have to come back to, because, people are financially stressed, and they, just like I can get stressed and go, whoa, if I'm not controlling myself, clients can be financially stressed as well, and they can do that at you. And it's not about you, it's about their financial stress. But, that's the part that I always come back to. And then sometimes the other way I frame it is, I've invested however many thousand in my undergraduate education, I have 2 postgraduate degrees, I have a membership, I would have spent $200,000 or more on my own education, and I'm not willing to put that at risk to save somebody $100. And kind of depending on how I'm feeling, I sort of think about it in the 2 ways, but that, that's what I sort of come back to. And so it's also that appreciation of, I know for me personally, that when my own personal finances are sorted, I can deal with just about anything the world throws at me. But when I'm stressed about money, I have difficulty making myself do anything, and everything kind of feels overwhelming. And so that helps me, I guess, in 2 parts. It helps me have compassion and empathy for people when they are financially stressed about, and empathy in that I can empathize why they're feeling that way, but that doesn't mean I'm going to discount the bill.
Okay.
But also that thing of, we're worth what we charge, and I'm happy to front up day after day, consult after consult, and passionately advocate for that. And also try and, if I am the person that generates the income in the practice, I've got to think about how I work efficiently and productively to get through the tasks that are in front of us, and to do them well, so that, we are able to make our business financially successful. And we've got to have profitable businesses to pay people competitive salaries.
And then if you're not the practice owner and you're just an employed vet, how do you translate that attitude, which is spectacular attitude? How do you translate that into your own pay package? I'm asking for, if somebody needs to go talk to the boss about, I want to get paid more. Have you got any advice on that?
Yeah. So I think, we've got to start with that first part of profitable businesses. The only businesses that can pay good remuneration are those that are profitable. Okay. So your role as an employee, whether you own the business or not, is to help make the business you work in profitable. And we've sort of got to start with that, that mindset. The first step is being super clear on what is it that you're asking for, what is it that you want. And then being clear about, I am willing to work to get what I want. I understand the business has got to be profitable. So I can articulate what I can bring in. I can turn my mind to, what are the things that I do that I can change, or maybe we can change as a team to help us be more productive. And sometimes as vets, we're guilty of doing things that maybe we don't really need to do, that someone else can do very competently, or doing things the way that things always should have been done, when there's someone else who can absolutely do that just as competently, if not more than us, and really kind of, identifying things. Because there's times that we will get in our own way, and then it is being willing to have that kind of conversation with our boss, and have the conversation, which initially can be scary, difficult to talk about money, but to say, this is where I want to go. I understand I've got to bring the money into the practice to get it. How are we going to do that? What money am I bringing in at the moment? And then how are we going to get it to the place that I want to get it to?
Yeah, that's great. That really is spectacular. And Gerard?
As a business owner, I read a lot of articles and things which talk about how businesses and how companies need to set environments up for success. And as a, at Animal Nurture Service, we spend a lot of time creating the environment which is conducive for our veterinarians to be able to practice the medicine that they want to practice. But then ultimately, it does come down to the individual and the veterinarian themselves. Like, they have a role in what happens. They play a critical role in the care of pets, and it's within their control. It's the things that they can control as well, which really impact the medicine they practice, the way clients talk to them, the way clients experience them. It's not random. None of this shit's random. We can influence, as Paula said, 50% of the of what happens in a situation. So really taking ownership of that, I think, is really quite powerful. And as Paula said, we, as business owners, we'd love to give pay rises to everyone. We'd love to pay everyone way more than what we do. But it also comes down to that individual's their role in generating that revenue in order to remunerate those veterinarians. So I'm not coming from try not to come from the world of a business owner, because I still as well draw a wage as well, and I have to work for my wage too.
Yeah.
But I think the pendulum's gone a little bit too far in terms of what companies need to do for their employees to some degree, when a lot of it is in control or is on the shoulders of the employee themselves.
Yeah. In other words, don't just complain about you're not getting paid enough. Do something about it. Be proactive about it and decide I want to earn more, and there are ways of doing it, and find ways of doing it.
Or demonstrate value.
Yeah. And then it doesn't always have to be clinical. I'm learning, or I have learned, most veterinary practices have room for improvement in terms of profitability, and a clever vet can look at it and go to the boss and say, listen, I think what we do here could be done a lot better. I'll do that for you. In exchange, I want, give me 50% of any increased earnings, or there are different ways other than just working harder on your clinical work of trying to generate income in a practice.
Sorry, Paul, you look like you were going to say something.
I think it sort of comes back to the things that you have control over. And I think one of the things that we've always got to be conscious of, and it can be difficult, is what we offer or recommend to people should be the same. We recommend based on what we look at this pet, or we look at this situation, and we say, with all of my wealth of knowledge and experience, this is the thing that is the best thing to do. And the best thing to do, when we're talking about what the best thing to do is, has absolutely no relevance to what we think that person's income or their spending capacity may be. It's what we think is best. And if we've fostered that trust in the consult room, and they can say to us, look, I just cannot financially accommodate this. This is where I can go. Yes, we can have the honest conversation of, okay, well, within what you can accommodate, this is my best plan. You have to accept that it isn't the best, because we're not getting all of the information and that kind of stuff. But yes, I will try and work with you. But I think that we can be a tendency, if people turn us down, to change what we're offering to people. And I've worked in some of the wealthiest areas in Australia, and I've worked in some of the poorest areas in Victoria as well. And the standard of medicine that I personally practice hasn't changed at all. It is, I still want to practice a really high standard of medicine. I'm really proud of it, and I will passionately advocate, because I think that's the way that is the best outcome for the pet. And it's also, one of the things that we will often say in the consult room is, look, knowledge is power. If we get this information up front, we know what we're dealing with. If we don't, yes, it may get better in 24, 48 hours, but if it doesn't, we've lost that time, and you'll often end up spending that amount of money or more. So it also often makes better financial sense to get the information kind of earlier in the piece. And I think that it can be a hard situation for people, particularly if they're empathetic to people's financial concerns, and they're not wanting to make people feel feel bad about their finances, and sort of about finding a way to language it to say, you know, it's not right for me to make a judgment about what you can or would spend. I've got to give you the information, and then we can work out a plan together, you know, about how we can get there in what you can accommodate. But we've got to be really careful not to kind of select our recommendations based on owners.
Our judgment of them, our you know, they judge us within, you know, 20 seconds to 2 minutes or something. You know, we make that same assessment as well. It's kind of just got to purge that from your mind. Sorry,
No. I was just going to say that's very useful for me still. I'm 17 years into practice. I own the practice, and I still struggle with it. It's still a challenge for me.
What I commonly get asked, and I see it as well, the whole conundrum of getting a lot of no's. How do you build how do you, like, I've developed my own strategies around this, but how do you still present and deliver what you think is appropriate, right? Regardless of the situation and regardless of the, you know, the socioeconomic status of where the hospital is. Like, how did you develop resiliency around going, this is what we need to do, when you know that 50% of the time they're going to say no? Like, getting no, rejection is a real, and accepting rejection is actually probably one of the crux of it, I think.
Yeah, I think sometimes for me it comes up a little bit to that, is it inner expectations or external expectations that drive you? And for me, it's definitely the internal expectations. So part of the mindset for me is my pride as a clinician and as a veterinarian is derived by my assessment about my job. And the things that I can control are how well I examine the animal, what plan I think is appropriate, and then how I present that plan to the owners. And so I base my personal and professional pride on, have I done the things that are within my control to the best of my ability? And if I'm happy with that, then I'm free from the consequences, if that makes sense. So that if I'm happy with the foot that I've put forward, if the owners have decided that that's not the path that they want to do, then that's absolutely okay. They've made that decision for their reasons. But my pride is based on how I performed in that situation. And it's also about having the courage and the language to say to people when their plan, you know, contravenes your values, is kind of one way of saying it, or when you think their plan is just like not acceptable. So, you know, not acceptable for that animal. So, you know, if you say I had a consult the other day where a dog had had a sudden fall, had a lameness in its forelimb, and I examined the dog and I was concerned about its elbow. I was concerned that it may have an articular fracture in its elbow, but that, you know, it didn't have parts of the fracture that were flapping in the breeze. And, you know, I had said to the owner, look, I'm really concerned about this. Articular fractures can be really serious. They can have long-term implications. They're also really painful. This is what we need to do. We need to admit your pet to the hospital, and we need to give them a general anaesthetic so that we can get diagnostic images of what's going on, because we're looking for fine lines in bones that overlap. And really important we get diagnostic images, and then we make a plan from there. And, you know, hopefully it won't be fractured, but at least then we will have that knowledge and that confidence to go forward. And, you know, this owner said, look, I just don't want to do that. And so I said, look, you know, I can understand that you might be anxious about leaving your pet here in hospital. I can understand that you might be anxious about having an anaesthetic, but I really think this is important. And, you know, if it was my dog, I would do exactly what I'm recommending, you know, to you, blah, blah, blah. And she just said, look, I just really don't want to. And, you know, so I had to say, look, it's absolutely your choice. You've got to understand that these are the reasons why I'm concerned. And, you know, you kind of have that kind of more uncomfortable, slightly confrontational conversation where you say, look, I really don't think this is the right thing to do. It is absolutely your choice, but this is what I'm worried about. And then, yes, while that dog didn't have a piece of bone flapping in the breeze, I still am a bit concerned whether it may have an elbow fracture, but that I felt out of that situation. I did the very best that I could in terms of advocating for the animal. I made it clear to the owner, but it wasn't a case of, you know, the dog's arm is half hanging off where we need to make the thing of a case of, I can't let you leave. You know, this becomes an RSPCA welfare concern, but you sort of got to be able to have the conversation that does switch into it feels slightly more confrontational, but there's ways that we can have it.
Yeah. And then you transition out of there, you know?
Yeah. And, you know,
but like part of it is you've done your piece, right? And then move on.
It's like I've left it on the table. You know, I have given everything I can. I've left it on the table. And it's like my personal pride is not based on whether or not the owners will go along with the plans that I suggest. My personal pride is based on, did I leave it on the table? Did I put my best foot forward? And am I able to do that day after day after day after day? And the thing is when you are able to do that consistently and you do believe in what you're saying and you're passionate about it, one of the consequences is that your success rate of people going along with the plan that you suggest is often really high, but that my personal pride isn't based on them saying yes, it's based on what I do.
That is something I want to ask actually for more personal reasons. So in that situation, what I then tend to do, and this comes back to maybe my personal need to feel liked and popular by the clients, is once they've said no, then I'll often, I won't say I'll change tack, but I'm very mindful of not making them feel guilty about what they decide, and not making them, because I worry then they won't come back to me when that elbow is still painful in 2-3 days time. I'll then follow up with saying, all right, that's the plan B. There's nothing wrong with that plan, but we need to, so these are the things I want to look out for. But I expect your dog to be a lot better in 48 hours time, and if he is not, then you do need to bring him back for those x-rays. Now, I don't know, is it just soft of me to try and then reassure the patient, that not the patient, the client, that they're not being cruel or negligent? Because I feel strongly, if you make them feel, they have their reasons for saying no, if I make them feel negligent or uncaring, they're going to go to a different vet next time.
I think for mine it is, there's a line where you do think people are being cruel and negligent, and I think that we've got to have the courage to say that and to have those conversations even when they're hard, to try and have them in an empathetic way. And then there's a space in the middle, you know, like that case where this isn't exactly what I've recommended and I feel a little bit uncomfortable about it, but it's not in a cruel or negligent place. And so that I think we've got to kind of be a little bit like, if someone goes to my way or the highway, and if you don't go my way, I'm not helping you, that's not a person that you have a trusted relationship with. So it's about okay, this is going to be our plan. Here's some structure to put around.
Yeah. Ooh. Oh, she's back.
Sorry.
I was about to say, if you dropped off, then you really did drop off at a really good time. It just went, that's what they put around it. Douche. Like, bam, she's gone. But it wasn't like as if it ended halfway through a word. It ended right in.
Right on that. Like, exactly.
I was like, wow, that's a you know, she finished that sentence and it cut it out. That's actually pretty good.
How are we for time? I can go on for forever. I'm loving this conversation, but
well, actually, there was a question there about this Love is Blind campaign. Paula, is that something you want to have a chat about?
So the Love is Blind campaign is a campaign that we're running joint between the AVA and the RSPCA, and it's about raising public awareness about the health concerns that brachycephalic dogs, or you know, when we talk in the public, we'll call them flat-faced dogs, have with their health. And that the path that we're trying to walk with that is that you know, these dogs, they're often lovely dogs and they're loved by people, and so we don't want to come out, you know, sort of placards in the street. Is that we want people to be aware of what the concerns are, and we want them to change the breeding standards and to have conversations with their vet about these dogs and to take the precautions. And absolutely, when people are getting these dogs, we do want them to think twice and to make that decision as, really informed. Because I can't tell you the number of times where I have seen a flat-faced dog in absolute crisis, in the emergency room with obstructed airways, or, and they've gone airway obstruction, heat stroke, melting from the inside. Every body system is cooking, and there's an animal there that is kind of cooking from the inside, has needed to go to the point of being on a ventilator, and sort of have people standing in front of me saying, I had no idea that this could ever happen or that this was possible. And, we just took our dog for a walk down to the coffee shop and we thought it would be fine. And we think it's a bit cute when he snorts. And so, that's one of the things where it's a case of, for me, it's like, what's the role of our professional association is to take the things that are difficult for me in my professional life and try and solve them on a bigger level. And so, it doesn't help kind of to give that person who is in crisis a lecture, but what we want to do is educate the other people that have these dogs or people who may be thinking about them, and to put that message out there so that they, so that they are aware, and that it encourages us to have conversations about brachycephalics and about, airway surgery and what we can do to improve them at points where they're not in crisis, and in a language which is not confrontational, which is empathetic and, and says, look, they do struggle, and we do need to be, aware of the challenges that we have. And one of the other parts that we've done with that Love is Blind program is that we've talked to all of the animal health companies that advertise with the AVA and said to them, look, we would, part of these dogs in the community is they're very Instagrammable, they're out there in marketing, and that's constantly in front of people's faces, and so it reinforces their popularity. So we've said to them, we would like you to use in your advertising healthy sound breeds, healthy sound animals. And if you're using breeds that have difficulty, if it's for a specific condition that does affect that breed. So, Cavalier King Charles are often used in advertising for heart medication because it is a disease that's specific to that breed. But, in general, when you're advertising flea control and tick control, use a healthy breed, and because they're the images we're putting out in the community. And that's something we try and do as the AVA. And I think we've got to be conscious about that as individuals with what we put and say on our own social media as well. That I think that we can tend to, in the promotion of our clinic or our businesses or our personal pages, like, they are cute dogs and they are really Instagrammable, and we can put those images out there as well. And that we've got to be conscious that when we do that, that we do have a role in giving a health and safety message as well. And the idea is to try and use some of that Love is Blind language so that we're starting that discussion at a point where people aren't in crisis.
Yeah. I like it how it's kind of going back further and further. It's like, where can we have our biggest impact, at a more of a sort of an awareness level, as opposed to just, right at that crisis point, did you know this is actually going to happen?
How can everyday vets get involved in this project, Paula, if you want to be supportive or find out more about it? Where do you go with it?
Yeah. So there's a lot of resources on the AVA page. So some of those resources are client facing, so videos that you can play in the consult room if you've got a video happening. There's also brochures that you can use as aids to talk through. So when you've got a 12-week-old flat-faced puppy in the room for a vaccination, having the conversation about some of those complications is really important at that stage, but can be difficult. So there's aids to help there. It's also about being conscious about the images that we put out. And there's also some educational resources for vets that we've had a couple of specialists put together about, correcting the underlying pathology and the extent to which we can and how we go about that. So there's making sure that we're kind of educated when we talk about the topic as well. And those resources are available on the AVA website.
Awesome. Excellent. I'll have a look at that. Gerardo? Yeah. All right. Let's wrap it up with our last question, with our standard last question, Paula. We'll skip a few of the other ones. We've had too much fun. Um, you're at a congress, and you've got the whole world's new grads in front of you, sitting, listening to wanting your wisdom. And you can give them one bit of advice. What do you say to all the new grad veterinarians of the world?
I'd say be comfortable with money. You can be an amazing veterinarian and an amazing contributor to your community, and you can be financially successful. And those things aren't mutually exclusive. They have to all happen together, and to go and pursue that. But never, ever, ever feel bad about being financially successful, because that's how ultimately that you remain in the profession and how you contribute to your community.
Awesome. Okay. I think we'll wrap it up. We'll wrap it up there.
Yeah. Actually, what books? We talked about one book.
Yes.
Which was Gretchen's book about what's it called again?
You want like a reading
Four
list?
tendencies. Yeah. Books.
Yeah.
Book recommendations.
Give us a couple of books.
So I have probably three. The book that's most about understanding yourself and understanding clients is The Four Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin.
Mm-hmm.
The other book that's been really important in terms of understanding motivation, and for me a lot when I talk about money, is a book called Drive by Dan Pink. Has a very delightful voice, so that's a lovely audio book. Mm-hmm. And then the third one is The Work in General by Brene Brown, but particularly her book called Daring Greatly.
I listened to that one last night.
Yeah, she's amazing, and that she, that thing we talked a little bit earlier about how do you continue to show up, and she talks a lot about how you have the skills and the knowledge and the empathy to keep on showing up, and that is part of how you have a successful life.
Nice.
Okay, I'll add this to the list. Alrighty. Okay, I think that's a great spot to call it a day.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
was a great talk.
so much for your time, Paula. Hang on. Here it is. How's you going to do it? There you go.
I can be the second worst speller. Yeah.
Oh,
I love these conversations. It's just such a privilege to meet veterinarians and realize what a diverse and not high performers always, but just what a great group of people it can be. I think it's such an honor to be through these podcasts, learning more and more what an honor it is to be part of a profession like this. It's really motivating, and I hope that people who listen to this get the same feeling from it.
Me too. Thanks, guys.
Alrighty. Thanks, Paula. Thanks, Gerardo. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, in case you're not sick of us yet, we're back. It was a tough job for us to pick just a few things that we think you could focus on from this episode. What we choose might not be the thing that grabs you, but we feel that there's some great value in the following topics. Do you do any group activities outside of work? If you don't, consider looking for an activity locally that resonates with you and sign up for a few sessions. Whether it's an exercise class, a sport, an artistic endeavor, or a cultural activity, anything that gets you involved locally and meet with the people outside of your work environment. Try to commit to at least 5 sessions. It's likely that you'll feel awkward for the first few times and be tempted to never go back. So make sure you give it a proper go.
Think about how you transition between activities, between consults, between surgery and consulting, between work and home. Do you have a routine that helps you transition? If you don't, make something up. Create a habit, a thought, even dance a little jig that you can use as a trigger to help your brain make the transition. Even as you walk through a doorway, that doorway can be a trigger for you to transition. Make it your own little quirk. Everyone has their unique brand of crazy. This could be yours.
Before you go to bed at night, write down the first few things that you want to achieve tomorrow in your diary, or in your phone reminder, or a sticky note on your cat's forehead, or anywhere. Do it for a week and see if it helps you to be more productive. Write down this line that Paula said in this podcast. I'm diligent and competent, not quick and cheap. I want to say it again. I'm diligent and competent, not quick and cheap. And remember this next time someone accuses you of being expensive or just being in it for the money. And then remember to be diligent and competent.
If you're looking for ways to increase your own wage, remember that you're part of a team and you're part of a business. So think of ways how you can help the workplace become more efficient and profitable. Something that can make the practice more profitable so that you can get paid more. Talk to your boss about it. Tell them why you'd like to do it and how you think you would like to be rewarded if it works. Then institute it. And that's all from us today. We hope you have an inspiring week where you can go make a difference to someone, even if it is just once. And don't forget, give us a rating on the iTunes store, especially if it's a good one. And if you liked our conversation with Paula, please tell 3 of your friends to have a listen too. Now, go smash it. And then you transition out of there.